We are back. The Line Movers College Football Podcast is back. And this weekend, we actually have college football games. It's been a long, long off season, but we're finally there. We're going to finally put the pads on and see some games this weekend. And then over the holiday weekend, we'll really get at it. But let me introduce our college football experts, the Line Mover college football experts. First and foremost, Trey Edge. How you doing tonight, Trey?
I'm great, David. Good to see you again, man. It's kind of hard to believe football season's here, yet, we were talking how it sneaks up on you. Season ends, and there's such a finality to it, and you think, I've got 8 months before it starts again, and boom, here it is. Gets here a lot quicker than we think. But looking forward to it and what should be a great college football season.
Agree. And my other guy, red hot last year, coming in, does all your golf on the Line Movers podcast and so much more, knows his sports back and forth like no other. Our guy, Ian Robbins. How we doing, Ian?
Great. Yeah. It's always nice when college football, especially college football is back around. Stinks up on you, like Trey said, but here we are, full throttle, ready to go.
Awesome. It's great to see you both. Glad we could be together. And we're going to go right at it. This weekend, they're going to call it week 0. Not many marquee games. There's a few on the schedule. Northwestern and Nebraska are going to head over to Ireland and play a game. But we're going to break down the Power 5 conferences tonight on the podcast and see if we can find anything of value or see what we're thinking going into the season. And once again, follow us all season long, Trey, Ian, and myself, all season at the Line Movers Network on Twitter at _LM Network. Follow along. We'll be posting all season long. So that's where you can find us. Let's start in the big, bad SEC. Seem to be finding their champion every year is coming from the SEC. This year, the two teams everyone's talking about once again in college football, Alabama and Georgia. In the SEC odds, Alabama's the favorite at -145. Georgia is the short little favorite here at +155. Alabama's got an interesting out-of-conference game. Week 2, they're going down to Austin to play the Longhorns. Georgia, on the other hand, is a really interesting week 1 out-of-conference game. The Ducks are going to come to Atlanta. So let's break down the SEC here, Ian and Trey. The other teams we're talking here, I've heard Tennessee, Kentucky. Jimbo has A&M back. What are you thinking here, Trey?
It has become – some people don't like it because the college football playoff has become Alabama, Georgia, then you throw in Ohio State. Wasn't last year, obviously, but you kind of can count on Alabama and Georgia now every single year, and this year is no different. If you look at the odds-on favorites, you throw Ohio State in there, but everybody thinks Alabama and Georgia are going to get back to the college football playoff. And it's interesting because Georgia coming off that national championship, the tendency would be to lean toward the defending national champ. But they lost so many players. They've got to replace 8 starters from a defense that was historically good. Now, they'll do it with the recruits that they get. They won't fall off, but it's enough that people look at it and say Alabama's going to be the favorite this year. And let's be real, Alabama's just loaded. I mean, they're loaded every year. But you look at that roster this year and you return a Heisman Trophy candidate, you're doing Heisman Trophy winner, and he's not even the favorite to win it this year, which is insane. C.J. Stroud from Ohio State is. But then you also throw in the best defensive player in the country in Will Anderson, and you just look at a team. And what I find interesting about Bama this year, it's almost like the Nick Saban revenge tour. Going into last year, he had never lost a game to an assistant coach, to a former assistant coach. He lost to Jimbo Fisher last year at A&M. He lost to Kirby Smart at Georgia. You can say that's not motivation all you want, but if you know Nick Saban, it's going to play a factor. And I think those two, and we'll get to some of the other teams. I'll let Ian jump in here, but I just think it's them and everybody else. We can talk about the Tennessees. We can talk about A&M. We can talk about Arkansas. Wherever you want to go with this, and I think there are some other teams that are going to be improved this year, but how do you really tell in a conference where two teams seem to be head and shoulders above everybody else?
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, you look at the top, Alabama and Georgia, just loaded top to bottom in the trenches. They build from the inside out, and I think that's the blueprint that teams that are going to realize that you really have to have is you build from the line and then you work your way out to the skills. And they don't rebuild, they reload. And you might have called last year Alabama's reloading season as Bryce Young took his first year in. He certainly had some growing pains. Got there. Ended up getting there to the final game, obviously losing to Georgia at the end there. But Georgia lost so much talent, number one overall pick in Trevon Walker. But, Javon Carter might have been a better defensive lineman last year. They returned their quarterback, who was the written-off quarterback, who now is a national championship quarterback, Stetson Bennett. And, they got Eric Gilbert, who's going to be eligible for them. And as a tight end, and they return some skill players and they return the defense, and Kirby Smart is just kind of filling in that Alabama kind of mindset. And it's hard to imagine one of those two teams not coming out, but A&M has been also following that, building from the trenches out, and you see the linemen and the offense and defensive line coming through, and they did get over the hump with Alabama last year, and they did play a lot better last year at Texas A&M, and Jimbo Fisher, how he gets his recruits, we're not going to talk about, but he does have talent there. He knows how to coach. But, so maybe they challenge. Ole Miss has a ton of transfers coming in. We know Lane Kiffin knows what he's doing out there. What's Brian Kelly going to do at LSU? A lot of coaches. The transfer portal is just a massive, massive tool now. It's like free agency, but even crazier because it's so hard to follow with 133 plus D1 teams plus all the 1AA teams, the FCS teams, with all their top talent coming through. So LSU is a big of an unknown. Tennessee's certainly got talent coming back in a weaker East, but can they actually get over the hump? They've seemed to falter towards the end when it's mattered. Kentucky's got a ton of talent coming back. Lost Wan'Dale Robinson, second-round draft pick, but they got the quarterback coming back. They got the running back coming back. Mike Stoops certainly has built that program up to another level. Are they ready to be the favorite? Are they ready to be the team that not the underdog in all these games? They play Florida week 2. Are they ready to be a favorite in that game? Florida's certainly in the rebuild because if some other team besides Georgia is going to get there in the East, whether it's Tennessee or Kentucky, you think this would be the year with Florida going through a complete rebuild with new coach Billy Napier out there. So it's a lot of question marks below the top two. I tend to think Alabama's the best team in the country. I mean, it's hard not to say hard not to say that with Bryce Young and just Will Anderson. Will Anderson might be the best player, period, in the country. He had an argument for the Heisman Trophy last year. And it's really hard to tell that they're not the best team. They've just proven it over the last 10, 15 years of college football. But where is that fourth playoff team going to come from? History says it's going to come from the SEC. Is Brian Kelly going to turn around the first year? I don't think so. I think A&M's that team that sneaks through. I think A&M's kind of been building. Jimbo's been building. I think they've been showing their talent. They've been getting better and better and better. I think this is a year that might break through, and that could be a tough test. Georgia in the East, yeah. I mean, I can't trust Kentucky or Tennessee, and Florida's not ready yet.
Yeah. On a scheduling quirk from the SEC, Alabama and Georgia will not play this year unless it's in the SEC title game in Atlanta. So both could actually be rolling into Atlanta. They're 11-1, 12-0. So we'll see if they will meet this year.
And one more thing, David, I would just say there's a couple teams there. If you look down that list, you're trying to figure out who can make a move or who might make a move down. Look at a team like Auburn, and people are going to say that they're going to be better. They've got 5 straight home games to start the season. They're going to look better than they are. They could start out the season, 4-1, and then the real schedule is going to hit, and they're not. They're going to struggle. I think you look at Arkansas, had such a great year last year, easy early schedule, but then you get Bama and 3 road games. I think there's going to be a lot of early success by some of these teams. Ole Miss could start 6-0.
Yeah, especially in the SEC West when you're talking about
Yeah.
all those talent in the SEC West.
Absolutely. But then you look what Mississippi has to end the season: LSU, A&M, Arkansas on the road, and Bama and Mississippi State at home. I mean, it's going to be trying to pick one of these teams to challenge is difficult. The obvious choice is A&M. I personally just don't see anybody in Alabama and Georgia's class, and I think that next group, I mean, you lump A&M and Tennessee and Kentucky, and I even throw Arkansas in there, and it's just it's a lot of teams battling for those 3 and 4 positions. And what's crazy is the number of quarterbacks in this league who have transferred in. A Jalen Daniels at LSU, who comes from Arizona State. Jackson Dart at Ole Miss comes in from Southern Cal. I mean, you can go down this list. There's so many guys.
Spencer
and there's
Rattler.
so many. Yeah, it's just crazy. So trying to figure out how those guys, are going to perform is why a team like a Tennessee, who has a returning quarterback, a team like Kentucky, who has a returning back and will live as. I mean, that's why they're getting more publicity and more positive reaction, because they have a proven commodity coming back. We'll see how those other transfers do, but in the end, it's Alabama and everybody, Alabama, Georgia, and everybody else.
I'm with you both. I agree. There's a huge gap after Alabama and Georgia. I'm going to put you both on the spot here. If I told you one team wins the SEC, but it's not Georgia or Alabama, who is it, Ian?
A&M to me. If they can get past Alabama like they did last year, then I think they take their chance into the title game. Plus, in that West, any team is primed for an upset, whether it's Ole Miss or Arkansas or LSU on a good day. I think, and Tennessee's also got Alabama. Anybody can get them, and I think A&M will be the benefactor.
Trey?
Yeah, I would too. If I'm going to go real dark horse, I'm going to go down to Kentucky, only because if you look at their schedule, they may be favored in every game but 2. And it's easier, with Georgia than the other side with Bama and A&M. They still have to beat them in the conference title game. I get that, but I'm just going farther down the list, looking for a dark horse at plus 5,000 or something like that to win it.
That's a good call. I think Tennessee is your next. They're competing with Tennessee for number 2.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. All right, let's move to the ACC. Clemson is your odds-on favorite in the ACC. They're minus 130 to win the conference. Last year was a down year. They didn't really have it all together. It was the first time, I believe, in 5 or 6 years, Clemson didn't make the college football playoffs. Now, Debo's top defensive coordinator, Brent Venables, leaves. He goes over and takes over his own program at Oklahoma. Is Clemson still safe, or Miami, NC State, your Tar Heels, Trey? What's the ACC going to look like as we come ready to kick off here, Ian?
I'm going to let Trey talk more on the ACC as he talks about his heels, but I don't believe in Clemson right now. I think their offensive talent is lacking the last couple of years since Trevor Lawrence left. Whether it's a confidence, a talent issue, I don't know, coaching issue, I don't know what it was, but something was missing last year. And I don't know if they refined that. Obviously the defensive talent is tremendous, but Venables has been there as long as Dabo's been there. And you don't see assistant coaches there that long. And he waited, and then he left finally this year for Oklahoma. So while the talent is there, is that transition going to be seamless without Venables? I just think that, I don't necessarily think there's a ton of talent, especially with Sam Hartman at Wake Forest out now. That certainly shifted one of the main contenders there. And the contenders are kind of lacking. NC State is in the same boat. They're talented. Can they score enough? Miami has the talent, certainly with Van Dyke at quarterback. Cristobal coming in with the first year is kind of the nerve-wracking piece, but there's talent there. Cristobal has been a winner. Miami is his home. That's been where Hurricanes fans wanted him there for years. He started FIU's program, put them on the map right down the street. I think Miami would be your biggest contender. I just think this is going to be a little bit wide open just like it was last year. And some team may come out. Yeah, NC State would be the obvious choice based on how they finished last year and kind of how their schedule shapes up and what they're shaping up to be. Worry about, can they score? This is kind of like the opposite of what we'll talk about the Pac-12 is, can any team score here as opposed to can any team stop anybody? But I just don't trust Clemson, especially at a minus 130 price. Something's just missing for me there, especially after last year, the way that the offense, just after losing Lawrence and Etienne and all the talent that they had, I obviously they have talent. Something just was missing there, and I don't know if they can get it back.
Trey.
I don't disagree. The problem in the ACC is exactly what Ian said. Who's gonna take that title? I mean, you look at what happened last year, and Clemson with the down year, and who won the ACC? Pitt. It was out of no. Well, I mean, Kenny Pickett was a great quarterback, but nobody picked Pitt to win the ACC. So when you look at it, you mentioned the Venables leaving as a defensive coordinator. They've still got probably the top defensive front in the country, but they also lost their offensive coordinator. Tony Elliott's gone. So you lost your defensive coordinator and your offensive coordinator. We'll see. I mean, that can make a huge difference in a team. Those have been mainstays in this Clemson on offense and defense. And the other thing to watch is the quarterback. DJ, and it's hard to say, Ucla struggled so badly last year.
Yeah.
Now, supposedly he's in shape and he's, a better mentally and ready to roll this year. But how long is that leash going to be? Cade Klubnik is right behind him, big-time recruit. I don't think that leash is going to be very long. And I think they would make that move fairly quickly if DJ struggles during the season. But again, Clemson's the favorite. Where do you go after that? NC State has been the media's choice to be that next team. You've got Miami in the Coastal because the Coastal's down. And Miami has Tyler Van Dyke at quarterback. It's an easy choice to make in the Coastal. I'm a Tar Heel, so it's hard for me to compliment NC State sometimes. They have a lot of guys returning. What people don't think about is how much they lost in their running game. The two best running backs are gone, over 1,400 yards and 30-some touchdowns, 40, and they also caught 49 passes. It's a big loss for them, and I need to see them step up and win a big game before I'm there with them. So, again, where do you go in this conference if you don't believe in Clemson? Miami may have the best quarterback in Van Dyke. You've got a new coach, so how does that play out? If there's going to be a dark horse in a conference that's going to step up and win, it very well may be the ACC again, just like last year. But who is that going to be? It's out of that group, Clemson, State, Miami. I think there's some teams that are going to fall back. I think Pitt is overrated this year. I mean, when your coach comes out and says you threw the ball too much last year and you had a guy like Kenny Pickett, how do you even say that? And then I think a team like a Boston College is going to be much better this year. Now, does that mean they're going to win the conference? No, but I think they're going to move up. Phil Jurkovec, Zay Flowers at wide receiver. And I will say, I think, if you're looking at under wins in a conference, good bets. Carolina at 7.5, I would take that in a heartbeat. You're coming off a year where you were preseason top 10, which was insane to begin with. Underachieved. You're going to start a freshman 5-star quarterback this year. Very young roster, but it's probably the best talent they've had in years across the board. It's just that nobody's thinking about them because of the egg they laid last year. So I think you're going to see some team surprise. I would pick Clemson to win it solely because I'm just not sold on anybody else. Again, my top three, you take State, you take Clemson, you take Miami. Sure, they can beat Clemson. I haven't, Cristobal, how's that going to go in Miami? He's going to recruit well, but Miami always recruits well. So if I'm picking somebody I would pick Clemson to win it, but if I was trying to find a team down the list, A sexy pick would have been people saying Wake Forest, but with Sam Hartman having an illness that we know nothing about and how long he's going to be out, and you've got to knock them down some. I'd probably lean Miami, especially if somebody can knock Clemson off on that other side, because the Coastal is just, from top to bottom, it's just not good.
I agree with you. For my money, I do kind of like NC State there, Trey, but you nailed it. Everyone is all over that NC State train.
Yep.
And I don't like to be on those crowded trains, and they usually crash. So,
well, look, hey, David, they've also got a very good quarterback.
Yes, they do.
Coming back in O'Leary. Yes. I mean, he is experienced, and we know how much that means.
Yep, and they beat Clemson last year, so they have the confidence. They'll know what it takes to beat them. They're not, coming off a shellac. So I think they have a shot there.
I agree.
Moving to the Big 12. The two big boys, as usual, Oklahoma and Texas are the favorites. Oklahoma, odds to win the Big 12, plus 190 on the Sooners. The Longhorns, plus 290. Longhorns have had some bad luck the last couple of weeks. They've had some really big injuries. One of the offensive linemen, one of the top-rated offensive linemen starters, and a wide receiver All-American candidate are both out for the season. The other shots people are talking about in the Big 12, Oklahoma State, plus 550 to win the Big 12. The Baylor Bears, who did it last year, plus 650. And I'm hearing some whimperings about the Kansas State Wildcats also at 12-1. Who wants to take the Big 12 first here, boys?
Have at it, Ian.
Yeah, Big 12, I think it's going to be kind of a crazy year for the Big 12. Wide open transition year. Obviously, Oklahoma, Texas getting ready to pack their bags for the SEC. New coach in place in Oklahoma, Venables. Wonder if Norman is more about shaming Lincoln Riley for leaving as opposed to getting behind a new coach and a bunch of transfers that they have, because not only did Lincoln Riley leave, but he took the quarterback, the receiver, and a whole bunch of other people out there with him. And that just doesn't spell like a recipe for success this year. Texas does have the injuries, which give me pause, but I think Sark is the best coach right now that we can trust. I think the talent's there. I think Bijan Robinson is the best player in this conference. So I know they have not achieved very much lately, and they got a big test against Alabama early, but I think Texas is going to be the best team, the most talented team that should get enough wins in the end.
Very good.
It's interesting because you look at, now you've got Venables at Oklahoma. You mentioned Riley leaving. You've got, Caleb Williams left. Even Spencer Rattler left and went to South Carolina. So who do you bring in at quarterback? Dylan Gabriel, the kid from Central, UCF. Yeah, and he's had a great career down there. I think his original offensive coordinator is actually at Oklahoma with him.
There's been a little bit of rekindling of that, like kind of everywhere. Bo Nix went out to his original guy at Oregon. A little bit of that kind of going on with the transfer portal.
Absolutely, and then you look at Baylor, and having won it last year, it's almost like you're picking them third, fourth, fifth down the line. They still probably have one of the best offensive lines in the country. They've got 5 senior offensive linemen coming back off a 12-2 team that averaged 219 yards rushing game. It's not going to be any secret what Dave Aranda does. He's going to run the ball at you, and that's where you get into trouble with a team like Texas, whose defense was terrible. I had it written down. They gave up over 30 points in their 7 losses last year. Have they addressed that? I don't know. Quinn Ayers, is there at quarterback. Oklahoma, so much talent, even with some of what they lost. Hard to pick against them. You mentioned my surprise team. I'm with you, David, in Kansas State. And people will say, who? They were 8-5 last year, and the transfer quarterback for them is Adrian Martinez, 4-year starter at Nebraska. Now, look, he drove Nebraska fans crazy.
Yes, he did.
But with what Kansas State does, he fits right in there. Perfectly. And the spotlight's a little bit off him a little bit, moving from Nebraska to Kansas State. So, again, if you're looking for a surprise team there, You got JT Daniels transferring from Georgia and going to West Virginia. It's just insane the number of quarterbacks we're having to keep up with all over the country. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, keep going. I put one more surprise team on you when you're done.
Yeah, that top 3 or 4, Oklahoma State's up there. Quarterback Spencer Sanders is there, but they lost, and I think it's a huge loss. They lost their defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles. Now, that guy is a defensive mastermind, and their defense was incredible last year, and they leaned on it. So what does that defense do? Do they take a step back now? I'm with Ian. I think it's an Oklahoma-Texas battle at the top, with Kansas State being a surprise team. And if I had to lay my money on it today, I'd take Oklahoma.
Yeah, and just real quick, the one surprise team I want to say is Kansas. And you might laugh at me. Kansas, what? Kansas? Yeah, Kansas. Coach Lance Leipold, that guy knows how to build up programs. He built up Wisconsin Whitewater in D3 to multiple national championships. Then he went to the D1 level of Buffalo and took that team to the MAC championship. Now he's got this, and they started to play better last year. They started to be competitive in games. And, the transfer portal brings talent in. Guys get opportunities. It's a down year in the conference. Look for Kansas to not win the conference, but maybe get a couple more wins that you might expect, or maybe cover some more spreads.
And to echo that, before we leave the Big 12, I'll just say, and if you want to look at him as a comparative coach, go to the ACC and look at Dave Clawson at Wake Forest. Dave Clawson is a fantastic football coach and has won at every level. He was in the MAC, won championships, and he is a program builder, just like you're talking about with Kansas. Those guys improve programs immediately. Does it mean they win 9 games? No. But I'm with you. I think that will be a better team, an improved team, just in effort alone.
Yeah.
That's a great breakdown. I hope everyone has their pens and pencils and taking notes, because Ian and Trey are dropping this knowledge. And if you take this and you walk over to your computer, you pull your phone up, you'll be able to profit on it. So make sure we're paying attention. Again, follow us all season long at the Line Movers Network. On Twitter, it's at @the_LM Network. Moving on to the Big Ten. Ohio State, the Buckeyes, are the odds-on favorite. They are minus 215 to win the Big Ten. CJ Stroud is back. He's the Heisman favorite. Ohio State's D let him down last year, but this year they claim they are absolutely loaded on D with playmakers on the front and at the linebacker and in the secondary. Michigan comes in as the second team, the second shot in the Big Ten. The Wolverines are sitting at 6-1 to win the Big Ten. Wisco, the Badgers, 11-1, and the Nittany Lions of Penn State sit at 15-1. Everyone seems like a long shot because the Buckeyes are such a big favorite here. Can anyone even challenge the Buckeyes this year, Ian?
In short, no. And in long, no. We're running short on time, but I'm going to make it real quick. No, and no. It's Ohio State, no one else. Talent, coaching, ability, experience, Ohio State, and no one else. The one thing I'll say is it's an off year. Northwestern is bad, and then they return a bunch of starters, and then they're usually good. So then I can fight on the other side to get beat by 4 touchdowns in the Big 12 in the Big 10 championship game like they do every other year. But Ohio State, best team, CJ Stroud, best quarterback with the best Jackson, Smith, and Jinja, best quarterback, best receiver, Travion Henderson, best running back. No, Ohio State.
And I'll make it quick, too, as well, David, because I agree with everything he said. Michigan got their chance last year, beat Ohio State. They did their thing. It's going to be back to the norm of Ohio State running this conference. I don't think anybody really can challenge them. I look at a team like Penn State, started the year last year 5-0. Quarterback got hurt. Could have easily been 7-0. So how do they bounce back? That could be a team that surprises. Not really surprises, but finally lives up to some of their billing. But it's Ohio State and everybody else. You can look at a team like Nebraska improving in Frost's fifth year, but how much are they going to improve? I mean, it's Wisconsin, Minnesota maybe playing the last game of the regular season for that side of things for the right to get beat by Ohio State. But it's Absolutely Ohio State and everybody else.
I'm with you. I am with you. For our fifth and final power conference, let's head out west. Let's go to the Pac-12. A lot of movement, obviously, going on here in the offseason here. UCLA and USC are going to the Big Ten. USC is going to the Big Ten. UCLA administrators are now saying, hold on, not so quick. We have some legal stuff we're going to have to figure out. Maybe we're not going. As of now, supposedly the two LA schools are going. As of right now, USC to win the Pac this year are sitting. They are the favorites, but it's close. They are 220 to win the Pac-12. Utah is right there with them. And talk about a media darling. They are getting all the attention, the Utes. They're at plus 240 to win the Pac. And also third slotted is the Oregon Ducks, who's also right there at sitting about plus 283 to 1-ish. So we got three teams really tight, really in the 2 to 3 range. The Ducks, the Utes, and USC. And then we have UCLA coming in 9 to 1. The Bruins are at. If you like UW, you like the Huskies from Washington, 14 to 1. The Beavers, Oregon State, 25 to 1. This is an interesting conference and what'll play out here. Some say USC is a couple years away. Riley needs a few years. Some say no, he brought everything with him that he wanted from Oklahoma. He's good right now. Where do you guys?
Yeah, it's amazing to me that Southern Cal is the favorite. When Utah won the conference last year and all the problems that Southern Cal had last year, coming off a 4-8 year, I get it. It's Lincoln Riley. I get he brought Caleb Williams with him, and he brought Jordan Allison over from Pitt, who was the Biletnikoff winner, best receiver in football. But to me, USC being favored is brand name. If I'm putting my favorite, it's Utah. Everything they did last year, you bring the quarterback back in Cam Rising for 10-4 last year. Kyle Whittingham is a proven commodity as a coach. It's not to say that Southern Cal is not going to be there, but what I question is he brought all this with him. Lincoln Riley did. Did he bring a defense with him?
Never has before.
Yeah, I'm not
Great
sure.
point.
Yeah, I'm just not sure about that. So, yes, they'll get the publicity. They'll be better. And he's going to do an incredible job out there getting transfers and getting recruits. But we're talking about this year. And I would favor Utah in that conference. I think Southern Cal will be there. I think Oregon, with the strength that they have up front, especially on the offensive line, question for me with Oregon is one thing. Your quarterback is Bo Nix from Auburn. And he was so inconsistent at Auburn. I think he averaged 7 yards a pass completion. Under 60% of his passes were complete. So it's a very competitive conference. I think it'll be a fun conference to watch because I think a lot of these matchups will be really, really entertaining when you get Southern Cal and Utah and Oregon. Oregon State will be much improved. They started improving last year. I think went to a bowl game for the first time in who knows how long.
Mm-hmm.
UCLA.
I agree.
The Chip Kerr, they returned their quarterback, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, for his 5th year. I think it's going to be a really fun conference to watch, but the team that plays the most fundamental, maybe most boring football in the conference is the best team in the conference to me, and that's Utah.
I totally agree with you. When you look at a conference like this where quarterback carousel through the transfer portal has just gone crazy. Delora coming from Washington State to Arizona. Emory Jones leaving Florida to go to Arizona State. You got Caleb Williams coming from Oklahoma to go to USC. Bo Nix coming from Auburn to go to Oregon. I mean, it just over and over. But the team that is consistent is Utah with Cam Rising. Kyle Whittingham's been there forever. Tavion Thomas. Great running back in place, great returning production, offensive firepower, played tough, played well. It's hard to argue with Utah, and the fact that they're not the favorite is all about name brand, like you said.
Yeah.
Lincoln Riley is long-term going to be the better coach. Long-term is going to get the better talent. Caleb Williams is long-term going to be the better quarterback. Addison, Mario Williams are long-term going to be the better receivers. These guys are moving from Pitt, Norman, Oklahoma to LA. That's a different lifestyle too. Lincoln Riley's moving to LA. I mean, yeah. Could they? Should they? Sure. There's obviously the talk about them going to the Big Ten, but I just think that consistency there, and the other consistent team that I see with the returning quarterback you just mentioned, which with the coach and quarterback Chip Kelly and DTR, Dorian Thompson Robinson, Zach Charbonnet at running back. You know, the interesting thing about this conference is nobody's going to play playing defense. Utah's going to play tough, but I don't know how many people are going to stop. The other teams aren't going to stop anybody. You know, David, you mentioned USC. Did Lincoln bring a defense? Probably not. You know, UCLA hasn't been able to stop anybody. So points are going to be flying. I like the consistency. I think Oregon could, you know, they have talent. I think Bo Nix for him, and me being an SEC guy, getting out of the shadow of his dad's school, going out and reuniting with his freshman year offensive coordinator, I think will be a net positive in the end. But they're going to get tested early. Really interesting game, week 1. David, you mentioned this earlier, the game Oregon against taking on Georgia. I think the interesting piece in there, not just that Bo Nix was Auburn and Georgia are big-time rivals anyway, but Dan Lanning is that new coach at Oregon coming from the national championship defensive coordinator from the Bulldogs, that record-setting defense, taking over the Ducks, meeting up week 1. We talked about Nick Saban's assistants earlier. This is a really interesting matchup, I think. You know, it's going to be a real tough test for Lanning, Coach Lanning there at Oregon. But, you know, Cristobal did not leave the cupboard empty there. I just think it might take a little bit of time. And by the time it gets figured out, I think Utah's going to be ready there. The other thing is there's no divisions this year. So it's top 2, play each other. How's the schedule work out? Yeah, obviously everyone's on the Utah train right now. So just looking for others, maybe UCLA with some of that experience. Oregon, I think, will be a team to back late, especially if they get really beat up by Georgia. I think that might be a team down the road that you want to back. USC is going to get better eventually. I don't know if it'll be – they're just going to be overvalued for their team. Arizona State's been a team that's really been there. Emory Jones is certainly an experienced quarterback. Washington State could put up points. You mentioned Oregon State, who's going to play tough, and that's a tough place to play out there in Corvallis. I think the middle of the conference is a lot better than it's been before. And when you have to play tougher teams in the middle, things get a little tougher at the top, especially for younger, inexperienced players like Caleb Williams.
One final note on that, and I'll make it before we get out of here real quick on the Oregon. If you like Oregon, if you like where they're headed, like their new head coach, look at one thing about them. We talked about a lack of defense in that conference. Well, Lanning's a defensive coordinator coming from Georgia who just had the best defense in the country. And they returned 7 starters on defense. So if you're looking for one team that makes strides defensively, maybe that's the team. Plus, they don't play Southern Cal in the regular season, and they get Utah and UCLA at home.
Yes.
So that's, you know, if you're looking for somebody to jump on there, I don't think that's a bad place to look.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree with that. But
great breakdown. That was great stuff, guys. Now, remember, this week we have week 0. We have a couple games. We'll whet the appetite. But again, we will be back next week and every week all season long. Next week, make sure you join us because as Ian and Trey just said, we have some incredible games. We have the Ducks and the Bulldogs, and we have some Big Ten matchups, and we have some ACC getting right off the hook and some great out-of-conference games. So make sure you're with us, and all season long, we'll be sending out our college football podcast in the middle of the week. Follow us on Twitter at @the_LM Network all season long. For Ian Robbins, for Trey Edge, I'm David Dorman. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, everyone. Good luck this week. Good luck this week. Good luck this year.
Looking forward to it, guys. Thanks, David. Thanks, Ian.